Have you ever walked into a room where no one was talking, but you could feel the tension? Or met someone who said nothing, yet their presence instantly made you feel safe? That's not magic. That's energy. That's leadership. That's the power of being quiet within, because when you're quiet inside, everything around you begins to calm down too. We often think chaos is something that happens around us: traffic jams, loud arguments, tight deadlines, overflowing inboxes. But have you ever noticed that some people seem completely unbothered by all that, while others get overwhelmed even in total silence? That's because the loudest kind of noise isn't external, it's internal. It's the endless stream of thoughts, doubts, assumptions, and fears that play in our minds like a broken record on loop. Inner noise is subtle, but relentless. It doesn't shout. It whispers constantly. It questions everything. Am I good enough? What if I fail? What do they think about me? Why did I say that? These thoughts don't ask for permission. They just show up uninvited. And if we're not careful, they begin to shape how we see the world and ourselves. This kind of noise drowns out clarity. It blurs our ability to be present. Imagine trying to listen to someone you love, but there's 1,000 radios playing inside your head. You nod, but you're not really there. You hear them, but you don't feel them. That's what inner noise does. It disconnects us from the moment and replaces reality with imagination fueled by fear. Most of our stress isn't caused by what's happening, but by the stories we're telling ourselves about what's happening. Someone replies late to a text, we spiral. A meeting gets rescheduled, we panic. A minor conflict becomes a full-blown internal trial with a jury, a judge, and a sentence, all happening in our own heads. Inner noise has a way of turning small things into emotional earthquakes. And the scariest part? No one else can hear it. You could be sitting in a peaceful garden, birds chirping, soft breeze, everything calm, but inside, there's a war. You smile on the outside while battling 1,000 thoughts on the inside. That's why people often say, you never really know what someone's going through. Because inner noise is invisible, but it weighs more than any external pressure ever could. It also disguises itself as productivity. Some people confuse inner noise with ambition. They think overthinking is planning. They think worrying is being responsible. But there's a difference between thinking something through and getting stuck in loops that drain your energy and paralyze your action. Inner noise wears the mask of being prepared, when in truth, it's just fear disguised as logic. We don't realize how much power this noise has until it becomes the reason we don't sleep well, don't speak up, don't start, or don't stop. It convinces us we're behind, even when we're making progress. It convinces us we're not enough, even when we've done more than most. It robs us of our peace and replaces it with endless questions that have no real answers. And it doesn't stop just because we're tired. In fact, it gets louder in silence. The moment we pause, the noise sees its chance. That's why many of us avoid stillness. We stay busy, scroll endlessly, binge watch, or constantly talk, not because we love doing those things, but because we're trying to avoid being left alone with the noise. The silence outside forces us to face the noise inside. But if we never sit with that noise, we never learn to understand it. And if we don't understand it, we can't quiet it. We end up reacting to everything around us, not because life is chaotic, but because we never found peace within. So we carry that noise into every interaction, every decision, every relationship, and wonder why we feel constantly drained. The truth is, inner noise doesn't need to be defeated, it needs to be understood. It's there for a reason. But when we let it run wild, when we don't question its source or intention, it becomes the loudest chaos we'll ever experience. Not the kind you can escape by leaving a room, but the kind you carry with you, wherever you go. Influence is often misunderstood. We tend to associate it with charisma, eloquence, or a massive following. But real influence isn't about how many people listen to you. It's about how deeply you affect those who do. And nothing affects others more profoundly than your energy, your presence, your state of being. That's why inner peace is not just a personal asset, it's a social force. Think of the last time you were around someone who was truly centered. They weren't trying to impress, convince, or dominate the space. They simply were. And somehow, their presence shifted the room. You felt safer, more grounded, less tense. That's not an accident. That's the invisible power of someone who has made peace with themselves. Their internal stillness becomes external stability for others. Inner peace isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself with big speeches or dramatic actions. It reveals itself in small moments, in how someone listens without rushing, how they speak without needing to be right, how they breathe even when everything around them is speeding up. These subtle behaviors create trust, and trust is the foundation of influence. We often underestimate how contagious energy is. Anxiety spreads fast, so does panic. But peace, real, grounded peace, it spreads too, just more quietly. A person who walks into chaos with calm doesn't just survive it, they start to reshape it. Others begin to mirror their pace, their tone, their presence. Suddenly, the temperature of the room changes. That's not coincidence. That's leadership in its purest form. You can tell when someone's influence comes from a place of unrest. It feels heavy. It comes with pressure, fear, sometimes manipulation. But when influence flows from a calm mind and a clear heart, it invites rather than demands. People don't feel pushed, they feel pulled. Not by force, but by presence. Not by noise, but by steadiness. Inner peace brings clarity, and clarity allows you to see others not as threats or obstacles, but as humans. This kind of vision changes how you relate, how you speak, how you lead. When you are no longer distracted by your own mental noise, you create space to truly understand the people around you. That kind of understanding builds influence that isn't temporary, it's lasting. It's not about being perfect. People don't follow you because you have no struggles. They follow you because, in the middle of struggle, you're not reactive. You're aware. You respond instead of panic. That consistency becomes magnetic. Others want to learn what you've learned not through your words, but by watching your way of being. Even in conflict, inner peace changes the game. A peaceful person can challenge without attacking. They can disagree without disrespect. Their strength doesn't come from volume, but from conviction rooted in calm. That kind of strength earns respect, even from those who oppose you. Influence born out of peace doesn't need to overpower. It holds its ground and invites others to do the same. People are drawn to what they lack. In a world full of noise, calm becomes attractive. In a world full of insecurity, presence becomes rare. If you can hold your own peace without needing to control everything or everyone, you become a lighthouse in a storm. Not because you shout louder, but because you shine steady. And the most powerful part, you don't even need to try. When your peace is real, it speaks louder than your words ever could. You won't need to convince people to listen. They will listen because they feel better when they're around you. Not because of what you say, but because of who you are when you've made peace within. Most of us grow up believing that success and peace come from controlling the variables around us. We plan, we manage, we prepare, and somewhere along the way, we begin to assume that if we just try hard enough, we can shape the world to fit our expectations. But life doesn't work that way. The world doesn't follow our script. People don't always behave how we hope. Circumstances don't always unfold how we imagined. And the harder we try to control everything, the more frustrated we become. The illusion of control is one of the most exhausting burdens we carry. We think if we can control traffic, we won't be late. If we can control someone else's opinion, we won't feel judged. If we can control the outcome, we won't have to deal with disappointment. But in truth, most of life lies outside our hands. The weather changes, people shift, plans fall through, And every time we place our peace in the hands of something we can't control, we set ourselves up to lose it. But there is something we can control, and that is ourselves. Not in a rigid, perfectionist way, but in a grounded, intentional way. We can lead our thoughts. We can guide our reactions. We can influence our emotions not by suppressing them, but by becoming aware of them. That shift from control to leadership is the beginning of maturity. It's the moment we stop blaming the world for how we feel and start taking ownership of our own internal state. Leadership, in its purest form, begins with the self. Before you lead others, before you lead a team, before you lead a movement, you lead your mind. You lead your focus. You lead your responses in the moments that don't go your way. That's the true test. Not how you behave when everything's going according to plan, but how you carry yourself when nothing is. Self-leadership is not about pretending to be unaffected. It's about noticing your triggers, understanding your patterns, and choosing a response that aligns with your values, not your emotions in that moment. That takes more strength than trying to control what's outside. Because reacting is easy, anyone can lose their cool. But choosing calm, choosing grace, choosing clarity, that's leadership. We all know people who try to control others through fear, through manipulation, through constant correction. But have you ever met someone who doesn't try to control anyone, yet somehow leads with quiet power? That person has learned the art of self-leadership. They don't need to dominate others to feel powerful. Their strength comes from within. They don't control people, they inspire them. There's a kind of freedom that comes when you stop trying to control what's not yours. You begin to reclaim your energy. You stop spending hours mentally rewriting conversations or planning for every unpredictable twist. You accept that chaos exists, but you don't have to become part of it. Instead, you anchor yourself, and that anchoring becomes your influence. The world will always test you. Situations will arise that are unfair, painful, or unexpected. You can't stop that, but you can decide who you will be in those moments. Will you crumble? Will you lash out? Or will you lead yourself with the kind of dignity and composure that earns real respect, not just from others, but from yourself? And the more you practice this, the more you realize, real control never came from trying to fix the world. It came from training the one person you wake up with and go to sleep with every single day yourself. Every moment is an opportunity to lead. Not through force, not through resistance, but through awareness and alignment with who you want to be, regardless of what the world throws at you. This shift isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It happens in the quiet moments when you pause before reacting, when you breathe instead of breaking, when you choose presence over panic. That's where real leadership begins. Not in controlling the world, but in leading yourself through it, one decision at a time. In a world addicted to movement, stillness is often misunderstood. We're constantly told to hustle, to stay busy, to keep grinding. Productivity has become a badge of honor, and rest is often mistaken for weakness. The one who pauses is seen as falling behind. But what if the pause isn't a setback? What if it's a strategy? What if stillness isn't laziness at all, but a form of power most people are too distracted to access? Stillness isn't the absence of activity, it's the presence of intention. It's the moment when you stop reacting and start observing. When you stop scrambling and start thinking. When you step back not because you're giving up, but because you're recalibrating. There's a difference between doing nothing and doing something deeply with awareness. Stillness is that quiet zone where your next move comes from clarity, not chaos. People often confuse rest with weakness because they associate movement with strength. But there's a different kind of strength, the kind that doesn't show itself in noise or motion. It's the strength of someone who can sit in silence without needing to fill it. Someone who doesn't feel pressured to prove themselves in every moment. Someone who doesn't need to broadcast their value, because they're already grounded in it. True power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it listens, it watches, it waits. And this kind of power, controlled, intentional, self-aware, is the kind that changes things without force. It's the difference between a wildfire and a candle. One destroys everything in its path, the other lights the way. Stillness is the candle. It's not trying to consume. It's simply holding its ground. There's a discipline in stillness that people often overlook. It takes effort to be still when your instincts are screaming to act. It takes strength to pause when everything around you is pressuring you to rush. It takes confidence to wait when the world values speed. And that kind of self-control, when developed, isn't passive. It's precise. It's strategic. Think of the most powerful leaders or thinkers you admire. Rarely are they the ones constantly reacting, constantly talking, constantly moving. More often, they are measured. They speak slowly. They pause before responding. They leave space in the conversation. That stillness doesn't mean they don't have something to say. It means they're choosing how and when to say it. That's power under control. Stillness creates space for wisdom. It allows thoughts to settle, emotions to cool, and insights to rise to the surface. When the mind is constantly agitated, it can't see clearly. It jumps from idea to idea, fear to fear, without ever landing on anything solid. But when you're still, the noise fades, and the signal becomes stronger. You begin to sense what really matters. In conflict, stillness can be the most powerful position. It allows you to observe rather than escalate, to respond rather than react. When others are losing their temper or scrambling for control, the one who remains still holds the real power, not because they're doing nothing, but because they're doing something much deeper. They're controlling their state, conserving their energy, and choosing their move with precision. We've been conditioned to believe that action equals impact. But impact comes from alignment. And alignment doesn't happen in motion, it happens in stillness. It's in the quiet moments, the reflective pauses, the deep breaths, that we remember what we stand for. That's where vision gets refined. That's where direction becomes clear. Not through rushing, but through resting with purpose. There's a storm that lives in many people, the storm of needing to keep up, prove worth, chase validation. Stillness isn't ignoring the storm. It's learning to stand inside it without letting it control you. It's knowing that your value is not in how much you do, but in how deeply you're connected to who you are while you do it. And that connection is forged not in the noise, but in the quiet. There's something about a calm person that shifts the entire atmosphere of a room. When everyone is tense, racing, speaking over each other, and one person walks in with quiet composure, everything seems to slow down. It's not because they demand silence. It's because they embody it. That's the power of calm. It doesn't compete for attention, but it earns respect the moment it's felt. True calm isn't passive. It's not someone pretending to be unaffected or detached. It's presence. It's someone who has faced their own chaos, wrestled with their own mind, and learned how to breathe through the noise. That kind of calm isn't surface level. It's not just a slow voice or a steady pace. It's rooted, and because it's real, it resonates far beyond words. We all have nervous systems wired to pick up on the emotions of others. That's why when someone panics, we start to panic. When someone is frustrated, it bleeds into our mood. But the opposite is also true. When someone is deeply calm, not forced, not fake, but truly settled, they give permission for everyone else to breathe again. Their calmness spreads, not by instruction, but by example. Think of a leader in a crisis. People don't follow the loudest voice. They follow the one that makes them feel safe, the one whose eyes are steady, the one who speaks with clarity, even when answers are few. That's not just good communication, it's emotional leadership. And calm is its foundation. Because you can't lead others into clarity if you're swallowed by your own chaos. Calm is a signal. It tells people, you don't have to rush. You don't have to fear. You can think clearly. You can slow down. And once one person models that behavior, it catches on. People start mirroring your tone, your energy, your rhythm. Meetings shift. Conversations soften. Rooms relax. That's not coincidence. It's the ripple effect of one calm presence standing firm. But calm doesn't mean you're unaffected. It doesn't mean you don't feel the weight of things. It just means you've learned not to pass your storm on to others. You've learned how to hold your tension, process it, and not project it. That's not weakness, that's emotional strength. And people feel safe around that kind of strength. They lean into it because it's rare. The most influential people in any room are often the quietest, not because they don't have anything to say, but because they know when to say it, and how. Their calmness gives their words weight. Their restraint makes their opinions more impactful. People listen because they trust the space from which those words come. A calm person doesn't have to prove their presence. Their presence proves itself. In relationships, true calm becomes healing. It helps soothe wounds not by solving everything, but by simply being stable when everything else feels unstable. A calm friend, partner, or mentor doesn't always have all the answers, but they have the energy that reminds you, you're not alone. It's okay. We'll figure it out. That kind of calm doesn't fix the problem, but it makes the problem feel survivable. In moments of conflict, calm has the power to disarm. When one person refuses to escalate, refuses to match the noise, and chooses composure instead, the argument often shifts. Not always immediately, but it's harder to fight with someone who won't feed the fire. That calmness becomes a mirror, and eventually the other person begins to see themselves differently in it. That's how calm can end cycles of reactivity without aggression, without control. The world is noisy, fast, overstimulated. Most people are reacting, defending, rushing. So when someone shows up with genuine calm, they stand out not because they try to, but because they don't need to. They're not swept away. And in that stillness, they create space for others to pause, to breathe, to realign. That space is contagious not through force, but through feeling. The world we live in is loud, reactive, and endlessly in motion. But the ones who leave the deepest impact aren't those who shout over the noise, they're the ones who rise above it. They don't dominate the room with intensity. They influence it with calm. Because the greatest strength doesn't come from controlling everything outside, it comes from mastering what's within. When we quiet the chaos inside, we stop adding to the chaos outside. When we learn to lead ourselves with intention, we stop seeking power in the wrong places. When we stop mistaking stillness for weakness, we begin to discover a power most people overlook. And when we embody real calm, we don't just find peace, we create it for others. It's not about withdrawing from the world. It's about showing up differently, less reactive, more aware, less frantic, more present. That's how we shift spaces without forcing them. That's how we lead without controlling. That's how we influence without speaking louder. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs more people who have the courage to be still, who have the discipline to stay composed, who have the awareness to respond, not react. Because the ones who are quiet within are the ones who create calm around.